Hi, book club members. I'm Jen Mosier,
And I'm Keri Honey.
and this is Warhammer 40k Book Club, where we read from a crag. This is episode 28, and our book is The Emperor's Gift by ADB. We posted several questions on our website, WH40kbookclub.com, and we encourage participation in our discussions via Twitter, YouTube, our site, or Encrypted Box channel. Spoiler warning: if you haven't yet read this book, it was published in 2012. Go to the site, check out the book and the questions, and come back to this episode as we'll be talking about the book in great detail from start to finish. With that, let's dive in.
Not that we would judge if you hadn't read the book, because obviously we hadn't read the book.
Right.
And some of us are still reading the Horus Heresy, so, we don't judge.
No, it's one of those things, though, like, when I do feel kind of bad when I'm like, spoiler warning for a book that came out 10 years ago.
Okay, this isn't Final Fantasy VII.
Oh my gosh. Don't even get me started on that. Anyways, did you like this book?
I did like the book.
I loved it.
Despite the fact that it was very slow and I was getting a little bit of Spear of the Emperor flashbacks. But at least I didn't have to wait over 200 pages for it to get good.
I think because I remembered, it was a little slow for me as well, but I just kept thinking, I was like, ADB is the anti-Stephen King, which if you've ever read any Stephen King horror novels, you know that the man can't stick a landing to save his life. And ADB is like the expert at sticking landings. So the whole time I was like, this is a little slow. But I thought the same thing about Spirit of the Emperor, and I have faith. And my faith was rewarded. And how? So what parts stood out to you?
Oh, wow. Well, let's see. How about, spoiler, everything with Bjorn in it? Just every word he had to say, down to your move, Inquisitor. God, especially when he was, like, finally just like, okay, that's enough. You guys made your point. Like, we're done here.
Children.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so. For me, the whole scenes with him, but the two things that stood out to me the most was the first was when Annika falls to her knees and she's just like, he exists. Like, this was, I mean, not the same thing as meeting like Lehman Russ or anything, but this was like meeting one of the apostles or something, like this larger than life figure. And just the fact, and I especially loved when she was like, you exist. And he's like, of course I exist. It's just, I think I said I pictured him talking in Ed Asner's voice, mostly from Up. I just pictured him being like, of course I exist.
What else would I be doing?
Right. And of course, my favorite scene, and this is probably going to be my favorite interaction of the whole year, is when Inquisitor Cisneros is like, who are you? And Hyperion is like, oh my god, I'm just going to cut this to the end because it's excruciating. This guy walked with the Emperor. He was the first High King after Lehman Russ. I did love that even the Inquisitor was like, oh.
Well, it's like when Bjorn, he was like, are you daft, man? It's written right here.
It's right here.
It's like, I got a nice name tag. Hello, my name is Indigo Montoya. Just, it's right there.
Yes.
And then even the Inquisitor falls on his knees. He's just like, oh my god, get up.
Oh, not you too.
It's like, was it true that you walked with the Emperor? Walked with them, fought with them, pissed with them? What else do you want? It's like, oh my god.
So, I know that we've talked about this in the past, but one of the reasons that I always love the Dreadnoughts is that they have run out of fucks to give. They are your like really old grandmother or grandfather who just like says shit and you're like, you're old, just say what you're gonna say. I feel like if they're all like, if you were to rank them all, he's definitely at a 10. He has run out of, I don't even know if he ever had any fucks to give. Like, he has no chill.
I mean, he might have way back in the day.
Maybe he's all the chill. I don't know. I can't figure out. He either has no chill or he has all the chill. Because he's just tired of all this bullshit. And I did love when they were like, in the name of the God Emperor. Oh god, that's what started all of this.
Yes, I love that. Because then the Inquisitor's so confused. He's like, but what does that mean? It's like, oh yes, you don't know everything that you think you do. Now, do you? They keep secrets even from you.
Exactly. Oh my god, I loved that whole sequence. Everything, pretty much every scene, and I think we both talked about this too, but so for that sequence, I just laughed so hard throughout it. I mean, belly laughing because it was just, oh my gosh, the stuff coming out of his mouth. I also, the scene that stood out to me because it was so, and in hindsight, it should not have been unexpected, but when Lord Uros gets killed. Or should I say, kilt.
I didn't see it coming. But then again, neither did he, and neither did anybody else, because that's how fast he moved.
I just heard Sean Connery from The Untouchables. How do you think he feels now? Better or worse? That scene was, and it was because it was so unexpected. Like you're reading and you're
because
like,
he even had his axe blade down and was leaning on it, so he had to move insanely fast to pick it up. Not only pick it up and then swirl it around before they could even react to kill him.
Yeah, or see it coming.
Right.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
So wonderful.
And like Hyperion had this moment of, what do I do? Like, you know, it's like, our king is down. Orders, Captain? I mean, it's just mass chaos.
It reminded me of a scene. So one of my favorite modern Westerns is a movie called Open Range. And again, spoiler alert for more than a 10-year-old movie. At the end, there's a bunch of posturing, our good guys and our bad guys. They line up, and the guy who's been touted as the big bad kind of mouths off, and the main character just shoots him in the face. And there's this solid 2 seconds of everyone going, what just happened? And then the action begins. And it's just a brilliant scene because you don't see that very often. So when I read this, I had the same thought where I was like, he just pulled an Open Range. Because there was that where everyone was like, what just happened?
Kind of, you know, not unlike the Celestial Lion losing his head in the middle of nowhere. Whereas the reader was like, literally, wait, what just happened?
Nothing is quite like that. This shocked me and I was so, whoa. But not like that, where we had to both go back and reread it and be like, oh god,
because there was like
that
no
was
tension.
Horrific.
Well, that because in that scene there was no tension going on. There was no blades out. There was everyone was hugging and like, we're gonna make this good. And then suddenly his head falls to his chest, and I was like, what, is he resting? And then mass chaos breaks loose and
right. Well, and in this one, I'm not gonna lie, I was very sad when the Celestial Lion died. When Uros died, I was kind of like, bye, Felicia.
Yeah, when he was originally talking like early on, and he was talking about the political moves, but I was like, well, now that I'm doing this, whatever Grandmaster, he lost his bid now for Supreme Grandmaster, and even Hyperion's is kind of like, is this up for debate right now? He's like, oh, well, heaven forbid anything happened to the Supreme Grandmaster, but now if something does, I can put my name in. It's like, okay, you're too ambitious for this role. Like, the Grey Knights are not supposed to be like this in many ways.
I kind of liked it though, because I think it was kind of a subtle reminder that even though the Adeptus Astartes have had all of this humanity and all of the base parts of humanity rubbed away, they're still people. There are arrogant assholes. There are social climbers. There are, there are some core parts of a human identity that they don't really rub away.
Mm-hmm.
So on one hand, I did not like him as a character, obviously, because when he died, I was like, but on the other hand, I did kind of like that because at first I had the same reaction. I was like, well, that's callous. All right, you guys can be dicks too.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, we saw that with Hyperion early on. He was just so arrogant with his powers.
Let's talk about that a little. Did you like Hyperion as a protagonist?
Man, at first, no. Because he was like, look at me, I'm so powerful, I can do everything. And maybe I agreed with some of the things that he was saying or doing, but they were going against orders. And Galileo wasn't telling him these not to do things to punish him. It's either because he needed to learn or his respect. Like when he sees the pariah that's in the gray, that used to be a gray knight, and he's just like, what
Yes.
are you? And he's like, respect. Like, we don't do this now. Just, kind of
That
like,
scene rubbed me, I think, the wrongest with him. So with that, what are you?
yeah, because it's
Galileu's like, we show respect. If he does it again,
right.
What are you? Excuse you.
It's like, a 5-year-old kid. You can't control what
Right.
they're going to say. And it's like when they see someone in a wheelchair and see them on the board, they'll just go up to them and be like, what's wrong with you?
Yes.
And they don't mean anything mean by it. It's just an honest question. But with Hyperion, he's not a 5-year-old child.
He is not a 5-year-old child.
It's like he can know respect at his age. And so there was a lot of, like, he was a child.
You know what? Yes. And we'll talk about this here in a second, but he really reminded me of a rebellious teenager. Where
Yes.
a lot of his actions, it was almost as if he never got out of that phase. Like he developed to be a 15-year-old child, and then it was just he just kind of stuck there mentally. And it's strange to me because he did have that cockiness of, well, I know best and I can do it, so I will do it. And he really rubbed me the wrong way from start to finish. And it wasn't like, and I know that we talked about this with Spear of the Emperor, it's behind me, which is why I'm pointing, where we didn't really like Amadeus, but Amadeus was more of like that pinnacle of duty first. It is all duty, right? And this guy was almost the exact opposite of that, where, yeah, duty's important, but I can also do a thing, so I'm going to do the thing.
Right.
I actually really liked, after Sothis' death, when Dunmendian tells him, I would have let you die. And Galileo is even like, And Malkadil comes around and says, yeah, I would have let you die too.
Oh, because he broke ranks. I mean, he did what he wanted to do. And they were even telling him when he was spinning away, he's like, I'm going to warp jump back. And they're like, don't. The demon will come right at you. He didn't trust that maybe they could have gone to find him and he's spinning out. No, he has to handle everything on his own.
Right. Very much so. And that, I don't know. I felt that was kind of, but again, looking at Uros, these people are people. And you're going to have these cocky bastards, right? Like, I would have thought that would have been beaten out of them. But apparently not. Apparently that's just kind of that core part of him.
Right.
Doesn't mean that I don't like it, though.
Which didn't, but he grew up after Galileo died. I mean, it was just him.
Very much so.
I mean, him and Mal were one of like the handful of survivors from fighting Angron. That's when that was his rite of passage. He was, it's kind of like the story of, the spoiled brat, and then his parents get killed, and now he has to grow up all of a sudden. That's kind of what it was like with Hyperion.
It was, and I will say I did like that, because I feel like the book is almost divided into two halves. There's the before, and there's the after.
Oh, absolutely, because it's the aftermath of after Angron.
Right, which would make sense, right? After you face Angron, it's fucking Angron. And he lost so many of his brothers, and I loved when he described the sense of loss, the sense of emptiness, and which broke my heart too, because I can't even imagine it. And just the fact that you do see this, and the other thing that I like too is that nobody really comments on it. He just is. He's just a different person now, and he does grow up a little bit, and I liked that.
Yeah,
I thought that was a redemption for him.
It would have cheapened it, I think. Like if Annika had been like, Hyperion, you've grown up. Well, okay, thanks. Because by the way, you have not.
We'll talk about her in a minute. Let me ask you this. Did his identity surprise you?
Okay, and I went back and forth on this question because unfortunately, I don't even remember how I stumbled upon this, but on some research, sometime I stumbled upon the fact that Zale from Ravanor became a Hyperion of the Grey Knights.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was stumbled upon that. I remember reading it in that little article like over and over again and going, first of all, who cared about Zale in the first place? Second, it's like, why? Why do we have to do this? And honestly, the answer is it still doesn't matter. Now, so I knew who he was going into it.
Right.
It took me a minute to remember, but when I saw Hyperion and when he said he was about 15 years old, I was like, wait a second, this is sounding familiar. And he talked about the flashbacks with the Black Throne. I was like, I think this is, and I looked it up. I'm like, yep, it definitely is him. So in a way, I kind of feel like I got robbed, of this whole like, oh my God, it's that guy. But I think I would have had the same reaction that I did when I first stumbled upon it. Just like, why? Why does it matter? Who cares? Because in the end, it didn't matter who he was. If anyone has read Ravanor, the Hyperion is not Zale.
Right.
At all. And if Hyperion could remember how he was back then, he'd probably be very ashamed of everything. But there's little things because I read Ravanor that kind of was like, oh yeah, because he remembered like a song his grandmother used to sing. Well, if you read Ravanor, you remember that his grandmother was found. He had no idea how long she had been dead because he was a drug addict. It was just, gone all the time. He doesn't even remember how his sister really died. Did he push her? Was she pushed? Did she fall? None of it mattered because he just wanted his next look. And it's the same thing with this. None of it mattered. Like how he was back then.
I think that's the part that I get hung up on. And I am biased going into this. I have a lot of very strong opinions about Ravanor in general. And I really did not like the whole Zale argument, the whole Zale arc. I didn't like him. He felt like an Atticid.
It did. It felt like the first book he had somewhat of a purpose.
Right.
After that, I feel that's why they put him in a coma because Dan Abnett had no idea what to do with him after that.
Right. And I have a lot of strong opinions on this subject. So I never liked that character. I'll just say that. So when I found out that it was Zale, I was kind of like
a drug addict?
There's a whole drunken article worth of my very strong opinion on this matter. It has to do with the blunter.
I was about to say, you don't like a drug addict who can somehow take over the mind of a blunter?
I have strong opinions. So if you've listened to this podcast before, that should come down as no surprise. So I didn't like the character. And I think the big thing that I had was that it didn't seem very important. And I actually didn't really understand. I didn't understand why it mattered to him. When all of a sudden he was like, I need to know who I am. And she tells him and he's like, oh, okay. Oh yeah, Ravanor's a big deal. Okay. And then he goes. And I guess maybe because he did say that he thought he was going to die on Armageddon.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's also one of those. It didn't matter. It didn't matter, but it might have also just been like, well, but she knows. So what's the harm in just asking?
Right. Well, and one of the things that I liked about it is it was kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge sort of thing. So, as I'm sure you know, Gideon Ravanor wrote the book, The Spheres of Longing. Well, in almost every Abnett book, someone at some point will mention having read The Spheres of Longing and The Armor of Contempt. And so, and Graham McNeil, I can't remember which book it is, but somebody mentions having read The Spheres of Longing. And I was like, hey. Right? It's these little things that I like about the Warhammer 40k universe. So I liked it on that level of this. Remember that guy? That to me is fun. But ultimately I was kind of like, I don't know if it was supposed to have a gravity to it. But we got there and okay. And my husband, because I also knew about that from research, but my husband didn't. And again, we're in the quarantine when I'm reading books aloud. When I got there, he was like, huh. Yeah. So.
Oh, okay. So, all right.
And he didn't know. Yeah. And when I got there, that was his only reaction. He was like, huh.
So,
I mean,
it makes me wonder a couple of things. Like, first of all, did it ever really matter that Zale became something? Would we ever have cared or ever have wondered? Because honestly, the way that the Ravanor trilogy ended, everything kind of just suddenly disappeared stage right. I mean, it was just gone.
I can't say, because I'm one of those weird people who a lot of times at the end of a book, I close the page and I think to myself, that was wonderful. I don't give a shit what happens now. Like, I am one of those people. And being a nerd in the 90s, this is particularly egregious. I never liked the Timothy Zahn trilogy because when the credits rolled at Return of the Jedi, I didn't give a shit what happened to any of these people. And so when I got to the end of Ravanor, it was actually the same with Eisenhorn too. When I closed that cover, I was like, what a nice story. I don't care about any of these people anymore. Like, I don't need to know what happens next. I can either fill it in with my mind and write all kinds of fanfic up here. Ask me about my Octavia and Septimus fanfic that's encased in my mind. But Ravanor was the same way when I got, and I think it was because I didn't like the Ravanor series that when I got to the end of it, I was like, I'm good.
I almost didn't finish the series. I got to the end of the first book and I was just so... Anyway, we could probably do a whole podcast on the Ravanor trilogy and our feelings.
That sounds like an idea for the Patreon podcast.
It certainly does. But
yeah, I guess.
So I'm just curious, like, why? Is this something that they decided, or was this just ADB just going, I think I want to do this with one of Dan Abnett's characters?
And if that's the case, then that's totally, again, I do appreciate a good sort of reference. Mm-hmm. I'm totally good with it. So, but the scene, I guess, I just didn't understand if it was supposed to have more gravity, which
might explain Dan Abnett's quote on the cover of the book.
You know what? If you have the copy, Dan Abnett ain't wrong.
No, he says ADB is heretically good.
ADB is heretically good. Emphasis on the heretic. We love you. So that bridges over, because in the scene, it's very interesting because when he's learning this about him and he's kind of like, Annika has a very interesting reaction to it too. She's very like, did you get what you came for? She seems very blasé about it.
At the same time, though, she kind of wanted his reaction about being with Ravanor. She's like, you were with Ravanor when all that was going down. He's like, huh. Yeah, okay.
So on one hand, I didn't really care that much, but I understood why she cared.
Oh, well, yeah, because undoubtedly, I mean, even though he was in Xenos and she's in Malleus, stories, I'm sure everybody has heard about Eisenhorn and Ravanor and everything.
Well, but it would be like I guess it would be as if all of a sudden you were talking with someone and they were like, trying to think of a good example of this. Like if you were talking with somebody and they were like, oh yeah, my grandfather was in the task force that took down Al Capone. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Like, like, oh yeah, he knew Elliot Ness. Yeah, no big deal. Right? Like, or, somebody all of a sudden mentioned like, oh yeah, I was part of the Watergate scandal. Anyways, like this famous person who did these famous things, and you have a member of his retinue right here and he doesn't even know it. Like, part of me wondered if there was a little bit of that, not celebrity, but like this, I'm near history. Like I'm near a part of history.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to a great night. How did you feel about Annika? So I feel like this gets divided into two things. How did you feel about her as a person? And how did you feel about her as an Inquisitor?
I think she's a terrible Inquisitor.
Oh, I'm so torn on it.
And that's and the reason why I say that is because her
loyalty is to Fenris.
I don't know what her loyalty. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is just to Fenris. Like in so many ways, she was a good Inquisitor, and I don't mean like a good Inquisitor like Jack, like like Jack Ryan. I mean like good at being an Inquisitor. When you have this dying space wolf, and they're like, we have to get him help, and she's like, I'm not leaving until I find out what happens. Like you can't wait like an hour, like just a little bit longer.
Well, but the other thing too is that he pretty much told you what happened. Demon took over the navigator, okay? Like
right. And they're like, we need to scuttle the ship. No, we can't scuttle this. We have to find everything. It's like, woman.
She was a very good Inquisitor. So yes, it will kind of, because there was that part where she was this very good Inquisitor who, nope, I'm not leaving this ship until I know exactly what happened, until we destroy it, if it needs to be destroyed. Right?
Because this is all going my way, by the way.
And she has no problem. I was a little stunned when she basically turns to Galio and is like, I'm in charge here, fucking fight me. And when Galio's like, you can just picture him sinking into his Terminator armor, like, because
wishing he could speak.
Poor Galio, he deserved better. Justice for Galio. Kind of, yeah. But occasionally, I mean, at the end, I don't know. Does she turn out to be a good person then? Because she basically recognizes that Cisneros is totally off his rocker, totally causing chaos, havoc, and needs to be taken care of? Does that make her then the good person versus the good Inquisitor? Like, does that make her like a good guy?
Here's what I'm really curious. I don't think she would have given a rat's ass about those people if Logan Grimnar hadn't been, we need to keep these people safe. But because her current king, even though really her current king is the Emperor, that's really who she's supposed to be, going to.
Right. But if that had been Marnius Calgar.
This is what I am wondering. Like, if it was another chapter, if it was another chapter and Marnius Calgar, which he wouldn't, but let's, for argument's sake, say that he would and be like, you just don't kill these people. All right. And if Marnius Calgar, which he wouldn't, but if he did go to war against the Inquisition, I don't think she would have been as defensive. I think she would have been right there with Lord Cisneros and been like, yeah, if we had to wipe you guys all out, okay.
I agree, actually. And I would be very interested in what other people think of that, because I got the distinct impression when Logan Grimnar was like, you will not kill these people. And she's like, yeah, of course not. I really do. And that's why I say I think she's, in her heart, she's loyal to Fenris first and foremost. And I don't know if that just comes. So maybe had it been Marnius Calgar and she had been born on Macragge or Calth, maybe that would have been the same thing. Like, maybe that's part of your identity if you grow up on a chapter's homeworld. Maybe it could be because the Fenrisians, as they say, that planet is literally a death world. It breeds hard-ass people.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
but I also have to say, though, I haven't read a single other book about an Inquisitor that makes such a big deal about their homeworld as this one. And that I couldn't, the only reason why I know where Erasmus Crowell is from is just because of where he's stationed. That's just kind of how it is. I don't know where anybody else is from, and it doesn't matter.
The only other time I have seen that is in, well, that's not true. So actually it's in the Imperial Guard books. So Caiaphas Cain.
Okay.
The Caiaphas Cain novels, the planet they are from is important. And obviously in the Gaunt's Ghosts books, Tanith, Belladon, Vergast, those are important, right? But those are very human things. And obviously, if you're a space marine, your planet is important because you're like a space marine and shit. I was a little surprised because the Inquisitors are supposed to kind of divorce themselves from that, right? That
Right.
it doesn't matter where you came from before, you now serve the throne.
Right.
And it's interesting you mention Erasmus Crowell, because as I was reading the book, I would love to have Annika and Crowell have lunch together. Because I would love to get his measure of her, and vice versa.
Because one thing I noticed with Annika is that it really came across to me that she was not an Inquisitor first. She was a Fenrisian first.
Yes.
And that's a problem with an Inquisitor.
It's a huge problem with an Inquisitor. Now, you could probably argue that in her line of work, that's probably come into conflict. This is probably the only time it's come into conflict. This is probably literally the first and only time that that's been a problem for her.
Possibly, except that because of that first loyalty to Fenris, that's why she went out after that beacon. She wasn't ordered to. She discovered it,
Right.
and she was determined to go out there because only she could do it, because she's from Fenris.
Right. Fenris, and again, I don't know if this is just because of it's an Inquisitor's homeworld, or it's the first founding chapter's homeworld. Maybe there are Inquisitors from McCrag and Calth, and
I'm sure that they are.
I'm sure there are.
I think
it was so anathema to what we've seen before.
And maybe that's just also Fenris in general, because you got to think about
it. Really could be
an Inquisitor from McCrag. They're going to do their duty, and that's to the God Emperor,
yes.
And that's to their Ordo, and to their Lord in the Ordo, and if they ever got up against Marneus Calgar, they would go against Marneus Calgar, because a McCragian's going to do their duty, because that's just that subsect of people. But
that's true, and the Fenrisians do breed wolves, not dogs.
And not only that, but they don't follow the codex.
Nope.
They don't have just 1,000 members.
Nope.
They've kind of always gone off the leash. It's been
right.
Very well known.
Let me ask you this question. So, looking at Ravanor, looking at Eisenhorn, looking at Crowell's books, the Vaults of Terra series, they give a lot of lip service to their retinues, and you really get to learn their retinues. I found it very odd that she was in a relationship with Clovan. I found that weird, especially with the giant Aquila tattooed across his face. It was like, that's not a fashion statement. I found that very strange. But other than that, I really didn't care about a single person in her retinue.
I kind of liked Darford. And that was just because he cracked jokes.
Right. There was that. I actually liked Merrick, the guy with the cyber mastiff.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, they would show up and I was like, oh, right, you people. I wasn't really that invested in them.
Well, one of my favorite scenes is when Darford, touches Hyperion's armor. And then, Hyperion actually cracks a joke. And he's just like, oh, yes. My God, crack a joke. And he pats his armor again. And then Hyperion's like, well, a pinch there. It's a little throbbing here. And he's just like, dang it, headache. He's like, I know you did this. I'm fine with it, but I know you did it.
Right.
Although, actually, I would have to say probably my favorite character of the whole bunch was the captain of the ship.
Oh, my gosh.
With his foppish hat.
I loved him.
And he was such a badass.
Oh, my God. He was like this badass old world pirate, and not like the ridiculous Johnny Depp bullshit.
Right.
Like this really just great pirate in living out his dreams, piloting a Grey Knight's vessel. And you're right, he was a total badass. He was calm and he was cool, but he also did have this very strong personality to him that I thought was amazing in terms of minor characters.
Well, especially when they're almost about to die because that Space Wolf ship just materializes out of the warp, cutting through that other flagship. He decides, I guess we're crash diving.
Oh my gosh.
Of course, that whole 2 pages, I was on the edge of my seat. It's like, because they're
Oh
kind
my
of,
gosh.
it reminded me a lot of Flight of the Eisenstein, just like on the edge of my seat, like how they're going to get through this. And then he looks back and sees how the other ship, because it didn't get away fast enough, it's destroyed. He's just like, it's like, well, they didn't have the balls to crash dive. Just while everybody is falling forward, people are dying. He's about falling out of his captain's throne, but he's holding on while leaning forward and still can make a sarcastic comment. And then when they level back out and they get back up to space, what's the first thing he does? He adjusts his hat.
Yes. He, in terms of minor badass characters, oh god, totally. So, but it was interesting, and this is a good segue, because I just sat there through most of the book, all of his interactions. I was like, how in the hell did you end up with the Grey Knights? Like, he has all of this personality. Like, again, in these little small bits, he is a presence. He has this wonderful personality. And he's with the Grey Knights.
We have to tell him to be nice to the space docks. Like, no jokes this time.
Right. So, what stood out most to you about the Grey Knights? In this book especially, because I feel like this was one of the first books, at least that I've read, where I felt as though at the end of the book, I understood exactly how the Grey Knights operate. The way they talk to each other, the way they look at the Imperium, which is somewhat interesting.
Well, this wasn't my first look, really, because I had read David Annandale's Grey Knights book, which actually gave me really, that was like my first really big look into them and how they work with the Ordo Malleus and how they operate, how the prognosticators operate. It did not go into the pariahs, so I'm very interested in how that happens. Doing research, later on with other Grey Knights novels. But do I feel like I understood them more? No. Just because, like, again, because Sons of Titan, I mean, it was one of those tight-knit 5-man groups.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of the same hierarchy. Plus, they had a Ordo Malleus. She didn't have a retinue with her, not really. They mostly stayed on the ship, and when they were boarding this other Ordo's ship, then they kind of were fighting against each other's retinues. But the big thing with that one, though, it delved really much more into the purpose of the prognosticator. Mm-hmm. So it was very interesting to see. So I almost want to kind of go back and kind of read that, like the pieces of it again, when it talks about the prognosticator, because is it the prognosticator? Is that still Hyperion? Mm-hmm. Or is it prognosticators? I just want to go back and see, I said, because basically the thing about Sons of Titan is that the prognosticator said some major demonic warp event was going to happen on a certain planet. They get there, there's orcs invading. Of course, the people are like, "Are you here to save us?" And it's like, "Oh, no, sorry. We're here looking for something else." And there happens to be another member of the Ordo Xenos who is there. They know that she's a Xanthite. They're kind of watching her. They're convinced that she's doing something, and it's actually because they're just convinced she's doing something that they inadvertently open the warp event. Bring up Kugoth. So the big thing was what they said in the prognosticator. They said, but we brought it about. So what was the prognosticator really seeing? Like, are we always doing a self-fulfilling thing with the prognosticators, or would this not happen if we were not there? And that's kind of what it analyzes, which is why I'm really curious, like, who's the prognosticator at the time for that. But this was obviously very different. Like, Angron is fucking there.
Yeah.
And doing Angron things.
So, I think the thing that surprised me the most was that, and this is always just one of those things where I'm always like, when they mention that it's Angron, Hyperion has this little internal dialogue where he's like, God, is that really one of the Emperor's sons? I mean, how do we know this isn't just some legend? Because we don't even know for sure, right? Like, he talks
when they talk about how it's one of the Conclave Diabolus, and because I wrote this down, and Hyperion says, but how can it be? There's fewer than 10 of them. I'm like, that's right. There are fewer than 10 of them.
You don't say. Yes. And yes, the fact that they have them, that's another thing. The fact that they have them labeled as such, you would almost expect that they would have it labeled as, oh shit, that's one of the traitor Primarchs. Or, that's one of the, the Archdemons. Like, there's all these different titles you could have given them. I found it interesting that when they said the Conclave Diabolus, I was like, oh, that just made it sound like, I don't know. And I'm sure to them it was like capital letters with the trademark symbol at the end, but it made it sound like just any big demon. Like Kugoth.
Right. Yeah, right? I think they were almost trying to make it seem that way, and I think that was because, again, they're trying to hide, like the Soviet Union here, they're trying to hide the misinformation, they're trying to, control the message. They can't let the people know that this is a fallen Primarch.
Right. But I just found it very interesting. These guys are demon hunters. That's kind of within their idiom, and they don't even know for sure.
I don't know if it's they don't know or they just hard to believe, because I could see it totally being the latter with it, being hard to believe. Because also, the Primarchs are such a myth.
Right.
At this
There's
point.
that. Well, I think, so that, I couldn't tell what that was what's going on there, because before they see Angron, they're kind of like, oh, it's Conclave Diabolus. And then, oh, is it really? Like, we don't even know what, so much is legend and myth. Is this really a Primarch? And then later on in the book, they're like, oh yeah, of course that was Angron. Of course it was. So I found that to be kind of strange. But there were actually a few things throughout here where they were like, yeah, we don't really know about this that much. And it was like, if anyone would have known about this, I thought it would have been you guys.
Well, but we saw that also in the first Erasmus Krall book when he sees the golden image.
Yes.
And he's just like, well, who are these 9 others?
Why are there 20 guys up on here? Fucking weird.
Right.
Yes. And but I guess I pictured, they're so secret. They're so secretive.
They probably have more secrets than the fallen angels, than the dark angels do.
Little, Freudian slip there. Yes, I think they do, and I think even they're victim to it. So I found that kind of interesting. I did also like that they praised the Sigillite.
Yes.
I thought that was kind of fun. I was like, hey!
Like, Malcador approves.
Malcador does approve. So speaking of Angron and Armageddon, what did you think about the war for Armageddon? Did you have a favorite part of it? Did you want to see more of it? Less of it?
Well, I wasn't expecting to see more because I know there's like a whole set of books dedicated just to the war for Armageddon.
Right. Which I have read. They're good.
Yeah, I mean, I have the whole omnibus that has all of them. So I'll get to that.
Hell's Reach is amazing.
I'll get to that, with everything else I haven't read. So any day now. Trying to favorite part. For some of it though, I almost felt a little lost in that there was so much going on at once. It was kind of hard to tell. Like, I thought I understood their orders, but when they landed, then I didn't understand exactly what was going on. And I think it's just because there's so much chaos. That in Hyperion, I think Hyperion's read Faulkner, damn it, because I feel like he was tapping in so many different consciousness all around him. It's almost kind of feeding in. It was like reading the beginning of The Sound and the Fury all over again. You just don't know which stream of consciousness he's kind of tapping into.
I love that book.
God, I hate that book. Yeah, sorry, hate it.
Faulkner's not for everyone.
No, clearly not.
To quote Animal House, I don't think Mrs. Faulkner liked him very much either. Yeah. So I did like that. And I think part of that was intentional because it was chaotic. But there was so much going on. And Hyperion, they've already established, is a character who cannot focus.
Right.
So the fact, and I actually liked that part of it because as soon as he drops down and there's all these people and all this stuff going on, it made sense to me that he was like, squirrel, 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 squirrel. Even though one of the squirrels was Mal, my boy Mal. If they would have left Mal behind, I would have thrown this book in the trash.
Yeah, I'm so glad Mal survived through the book.
He's my favorite character.
He wasn't my favorite, but man, he was way up there.
Oh God, I just have a soft spot for the either tech Marines or the soon to be Tech Marines, I guess. But I just loved Mel. So, but yeah, he was this very just could not focus on anything, and it was very chaotic. But mostly, I think my biggest takeaway from the War of Armageddon was that Angron is terrifying.
Yes. However, I don't think he's more terrifying than Kharn.
Oh gosh. I don't know because
reading this scene with him and then remembering Shroud of Night when they see Kharn coming up swiveling his axes, that to me was 10 times more terrifying than dealing with Angron.
Well, I wonder if it was because of the reactions, right? Because Kharn shows up and the Alpha Legion, Space Marines, are like, no, fuck that. Right? They're not scared per se because they know no fear, but they're like, no, I don't want any part of that. Whereas with Angron, the Grey Knights they're resigned, right? That this thing is terrifying, but by God, we're gonna kill this thing.
Or
so
die
I thought
trying.
that was right, literally. And so I don't know if maybe it was the reaction, the fact that you have these guys who they're facing a demon Primarch, and they're just like, same shit, different day. Whereas with the card, they're all like, they hard noped. I just imagined it, that scene, like it's one of my favorite gifs of all times, because if you play Dark Souls, you know the exact scene when the guy's running down the hall, there's that thing with all the bones, and he turns around, nope. Yeah, pretty much with Kharn. So I found Angron to be a little more terrifying, but again, I think I also had sadness. Because I've read Betrayer, every time I see Angron now as the Demon Primarch, I get a little feels. Although, my first question to him was, could somebody ask where Lotara is? Is she the machine spirit for one of their ships now? Please, inquiring minds want to know. That was my big thing there. I did understand why the wolves called for help, though.
Well, yes.
So
that might be a good reason to for Logan Grimnar to be like, oh, by the way, there is a secret sect of Adeptus Astartes who do nothing but this.
I actually love the idea that Logan Grimnar showed up, saw Angron, and was like, this is not even our business. Like, there's a whole lot of dudes who can deal with this. So the wolves are not a chapter known for their measured reactions. Everything within this book, every single interaction within the wolves, with the wolves, I was like, yeah, that seems about right.
Yeah,
that seems about right for the wolves. Especially with Logan Grimnar, I was like, these guys got no manners. It was like, do you understand them better as a chapter? Because I know that you're not a big wolf fan.
Yeah, actually, this is the book that made me like the Space Wolves.
Hey! Welcome.
So I was starting to kind of like them after Ashes of Prospero. Mm-hmm. But no, this one like really sealed it for me. And you know, part of it's Logan Grimnar. I liked Brand Rothroat.
He's a badass
as well. Of course, Bjorn. I mean, who doesn't like Bjorn? But I even really liked the wolf that was on that wreck, the ship that's like limping along to get repairs, and he's still just talking smack to Lord Cisneros. It's like, you know, we got a whole chapter here, and he's like, and like, is there anybody we can talk to? You know, so kind of, you know, You think of Monty Python. Is there anyone else up there we can talk to? He's like, yeah, give me 4 hours.
Oh, okay. So reading the book, as soon as they were like, give us 4 hours, I was like, oh no, they're not.
See, I had no idea who they were going to get.
What takes about 4 hours to wake up?
Well, I didn't know this. I actually thought they were stalling for time for Logan to get back.
Well, and the funny thing is, to me, is because as soon as they were like, give us 4 hours, my husband and I both were like, oh no, they didn't. Of course they're going to. Because when the Inquisition comes knocking at your door, you get the fell hand up here. I love the idea. And I feel so bad for him too, because I imagine him just being like, oh God, is it the Inquisition again? Oh God. Okay, so were they right?
You know, the thing is, so the only one who was right in this was Bjorn. When he said at the end, he's like, you know, you guys made a stand and you were right. You guys were right, but how you've come about this is wrong. Now, I totally understand the wolves' request.
Right.
At the same time, I think it was foolish for them to think that the soldiers who saw what happened could leave. That I understand.
Oh,
as much as it kills me, I think it sucks and I hate their reasoning for it. I understand the soldiers. What got me was the population who saw none of it.
Right.
And they sterilized them.
Yep.
And then put them in work camps.
I really go back and forth. So if you read like the Caiaphas Cain books or the Gaunt's Ghost books, the Imperial Guard, life is hard. Life expectancy is short unless you're a named character. It is not easy. These people, I mean, the Imperium subscribes to the Russian school of war, which is just throw bodies at it. So on one hand, I'm like, yeah, these people saw demons, like things that are not supposed to exist. But on the other hand, with a lot of the guardsmen, I was like, these guys are probably going to be dead inside of a year, because Imperial Guard life, and I feel like the Gaunt's Ghost book, well, and the Cain books also demonstrate this so well, is that you go to one battlefield and you face unspeakable horrors, then you get on your ship, you go somewhere, and a few months later you are in a battlefield facing unspeakable horrors. And that's just the guard life. It's not like they're going to go home, be with their families for a few years, and then go back out when war calls. Oh no, these guys are just going right back into the meat grinder. And so part of me was like, guys, this problem is probably going to fix itself.
Well, it's not only that, but I was also, you know, and I was thinking about it, it's like, you know, they're going to go home and they're going to talk tall tales about the Adeptus Astartes fighting these demons. How many people are really going to buy into this and believe it? And do they even know who the Grey Knights are? No. All they'll know is that they saw some Adeptus Astartes. Yes, they were in silver armor. Well, who isn't? There's so many chapters out there. They don't know who it was. You're not going to be able to pinpoint that down.
Well, and most of them, unless you live very close to the Space Marines, you probably couldn't even name all of the chapters off the top of your head, or like the first founding chapters. You probably don't know them. And yeah, there's a ton of chapters. So, we saw these guys in silver. Oh, they all wear silver?
Right.
Yes.
And you telling tales about how they took down this great demon, and saved us all. Well, they can't know about the demon. Well, but they saved everybody. Kind of like that one meme that you have, that, the people coming out and being like, oh yeah, you saved us from the demons. Is everything going to be okay? Yes, but actually no. Because now
but no.
But because now we have to kill you all for reasons, because you happen to see a demon. Which, just kind of goes back to my whole theories. Like, I think the Inquisition is doing the world wrong and trying to cover all this up. Because first of all, a lot of people, there's going to be tall tales. Like, most people, we've discussed this many times, don't believe that the Adeptus Astartes are real. That there's some great myth.
The Emperor's angels are a myth. They're a parable.
Like, the Emperor is on the golden throne. Maybe this is what we believe. We kind of moved on. There's just so many planets. and people.
Right.
And they're so afraid of these cults taking in. Well, guess what, folks? The cults take in no matter what, because the demons are always looking for those with weakness. And
right.
and
So that's one of those things too, where they're like, oh, we can't have cults popping up. I mean, like, if it's not them. And I understand that, if you see a roach, even though there's 50 behind the wall, you're still going to kill that one that you see.
Right.
Right. But I mean, at some point, and I think the thing that killed me was when they killed the listening stations that just happened to note that the ship was going past, because you could have scuttled that ship and the listening station would have been like, wait, what ship? Mm-hmm. Oh, that one? I probably got lost in the warp. It's like, again, because the Imperium is so large. Right. You're talking about like, it's trying to pick out a single grain of sand, right? This one piece of rice, like if you're pouring a 5-pound bag of rice, oh, that one piece looks black. It'll sort itself out.
Well, and now what's been created in the end by you being like, well, we have to go kill billions of people now. We have to go exterminate a whole bunch of planets because this one person might say something to someone. That's going too far beyond.
Way too far.
I mean, that. And now what you also have, what you're not realizing, is that you've made things worse, and not just exterminating a planet. It's that now these people who actually did get away because the wolves helped them are going to go home and be like, the wolves had to escort us home because the Inquisition was going to kill us for some reason.
Well, I don't think the wolves told them that. I think they probably obfuscated that, but it was probably like, oh, there's something hunting us. We got to go. And they were probably like,
that there were ships out there getting shot.
Because, maybe.
Yeah, I think they do, because they were trying to, get them one by one. And then right. Grimnar was like, nope, let's wrap it up. You're all going at once because they can't get you all.
I liked how cunning. So that was another thing. And this is a common refrain with the wolves. And they even say that later when he kind of touches Logan Grimnar's mind and he's like, oh, this guy's not an idiot. This is not some savage beast. This guy is very smart. But I liked how cunning they were when they realized that, oh, they've been just moving people onto different ships. We've been hunting empty vessels a lot of the times because they have moved people, and they've done like they've dropped like 20 or 30 people here, mm-hmm. right? So let's bridge, because I think this is going to give us a good conversation to wrap up here. First off, how did you feel about Cisneros?
Oh, he's an asshole Inquisitor. I mean, it's just I don't know what else you want from me. I mean, I couldn't tell who was the bigger jerk, him or Doros, but I think they're around the same. And I think, when Hyperion's asking Doros, like, well, did you believe did you believe his story about treachery? And he's like, well, of course not. But, I gotta, like, but then after what Cisneros said, was any of that even true? Did Joros just lie? Did Joros lie to Hyperion, or did Cisneros lie to Hyperion? I mean, who knows?
Who knows? Because, Joros was kind of like, Cisneros is kind of calling the shots, and, I'm good with it. It says whatever. And this was a guy who opened fire on ships because, they could betray us, because I've heard stories. But then later he goes back and is like, well, that was all Joros telling me these things. And there's something, and I want to get your opinion on this, because I don't think it wasn't adequately closed out for me. He's young. Remember, they even say, they're like, he's very young. Like, he seems young even for having had Rejuvenat, because he has all these youthful qualities. And Annika says, she's like, this guy has no paper trail. There's nothing, I can't find anything about him. And she's like, even that's weird, even by Inquisition standards. And then at the end, she kind of says, she's like, look, I know that people are gunning for your job. That's just the Inquisition.
Right.
So they kind of set up this mystery about who is this guy really, other than a super powerful psyker.
Well, as a super powerful psyker, couldn't he wipe his own paper trail? I mean,
I guess, but that seems...
Or as a super powerful psyker, is that how he might have got these promotions so quickly?
Maybe, right? That's entirely possible. I guess I just felt like I Like, by that point, I was like, who is this guy?
So, like,
who can call an entire Adeptus Astartes chapter up on the phone?
so like I even looked up in the Ravanor books because I remember there was a Lord Inquisitor in there who was very big and actually had a big part in deciding what was going to happen to Ravanor at the very end. And I looked up to see if that was the same person, and it's not. I didn't think it would be because of Ordo Xenos versus Malleus, but I still wanted to check because I am kind of curious who this guy is, where he came from.
Right.
Because I'm having a hard time believing that this is his first book. And if it is, then maybe he really is that young and there's like a little more, there's other shady stuff kind of going on. One thing I will say about him is that he kind of almost got me to his side when he brought Hyperion in there. And he was almost like pleading with Hyperion. He's like, it's gotten out of control. I need to get this back under control. I need your help to do so. And Hyperion's like, ow. Like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah, what the fuck do you want me to do?
Yeah, he's like, you gotta help me convince them that they're gonna have to go on this crusade for penitence. And it's like, no, you're gonna have to bend. And there's the thing is that the Inquisition, and he begged, Bjorn's like, just a 100-year crusade. And he's like, well, why should we have to do that when you guys were wrong too?
And I felt, so this is his only book, by the way. This is an ADB character from here. So I read that scene, and my first reaction was, this is a metaphor for the Inquisition. You have a guy, this guy right here. He walked alongside a Primarch. He walked alongside the Allfather. He walked on the fields of Terra, right? He was at major battles during the Horus Heresy. And at first, the guy is like, oh my gosh. But then the second words out of his mouth are, yeah, you guys just need to do this crusade to make the Inquisition feel better. It's like, you have been presented, not necessarily with divinity, but at the time, because this is 600 something years before Robbie G wakes up, you have been presented with the closest thing to divinity that you're ever going to come to.
Mm-hmm.
And your first reaction is, yeah, but let's talk about what we want.
Right.
Because
and
we're
nowhere,
the throne.
And that's the other thing is that, he at one point he says, we're both come to compromise. He never offered a compromise.
Never. Well, because it's the Inquisition.
I think the only compromise
is you compromise with us. We don't compromise with you.
Like the only compromise he could think of was like, well, we won't exterminatus your planet, or I guess we can't contain it and we're going to have to let it go. That's our concession. That you've won this little area.
When he suggested declaring them excommunicatus and exterminatusing Fenris, I recoiled from the book. My husband, reading it aloud to him, he was like, what the fuck?
Even Hyperion, he's just like, this is a first founding. You don't do this.
Oh my God. Like, just the arrogance was, but again, I almost felt like it was a metaphor. And even though this is like, almost a full century before Robbie G wakes up, a full millennia before Robbie G wakes up, I feel like this should retroactively be a voicemail. Hey, Rob, fun story. Because one of the things in here at the end, Bjorn says the Inquisition will never leave us alone. And one of the final questions from the Inquisition is, what do we know about their gene seed?
Right.
And I can't remember, paging Skywatcher Adept, I can't remember if this is just hinted at a codex or if there was an actual story, because I want to say that we might have even read it. There's a short story where they hint the fact that in the modern era, the Space Wolves are having issues getting their gene seed. And sometimes it comes to them and it's spoiled. Which, if anybody could make that work, it would be the Inquisition. These people are wrathful. And all I could think of in this book, and I know ADB does not like when we say this, but he really doesn't have a good view. Maybe he doesn't hate the Inquisition or the Imperium, but I think he definitely hates the Inquisition, because all I thought about was the Spear of the Emperor. I was like, the Spears of the Emperor guys needed to read this book, because then they would know one does not question the Inquisition.
Oh, no,
One does not go against the Inquisition.
Which is why it's making what's going on now so delightful with Robbie G. Are you guys going to go against Reboot Gulliman? Are y'all really? Do you think you're going to win that one?
Oh, of course. Because it's the Inquisition, and they don't want to get rid of their power. So I could absolutely. But that's, like, part of me was like, Rob needs to read this book. Because
Rob needs to have tea with Bjorn.
Can you imagine those two seeing each other? Because he would just be like, weren't you a kid? You were like brand new. But do you understand? I felt at the end of the book, I didn't really understand Cisneros' actions and motivations, other than I think he was a kid who got in over his head, and then pride prevented him from being like, okay, dude, I got it. I got Bjorn telling me to fuck off. I'm gonna fuck off.
That's really what I got out of, especially when he is asking Hyperion for help and he says it's gotten all out of control. He really thought, whether Doros told him to or not, he really thought that by, pulling rank, he could get the Space Wolves to back down.
He apparently does not. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of a little bit is actually in The Dark Knight. Do you remember when Michael Caine is explaining, he's like, they turned to a man that they didn't understand, and with all due respect, you don't understand him either. That's all I could think of, because I feel as though, especially in the Imperium and especially in the Inquisition, they just don't understand the wolves. And they don't understand that. I think they forget that the whole Adeptus Astartes Inquisition thing is a tenuous alignment, and they're basically aligned because the Adeptus Astartes allow it. The wolves are not the Ultramarines. The wolves are not the Imperial Fists. The wolves are the wolves. And you have apparently grossly underestimated them.
And all we need is for the wolves and the Dark Angels to put aside their differences for a little bit, and they can go against the Inquisition.
10 out of 10 book of the year would read.
Right?
Well, it's okay. So here's the thing. All they would have to do is, because it's just an honor duel. So all they would have to do is they meet in the beginning of the book, and it's like that scene in Predator. Dark Angels, you son of a bitch! And they fight, and they punch each other, they grab each other's fists, and then they go and they take on the Inquisition. Which would be a lot like hunting Predator.
Would totally read.
I want this book to happen so badly. Somebody needs to write this. I would read it. I would buy the collector's edition.
This is true. Hey, Guy Haley, what you doing? You doing anything? Or David Annandale.
Somebody write the thing.
We're asking y'all to write the thing.
Right. Make the thing happen. Black Library would be like, that's not canon, and I'd be like, it's fine.
Robbie G, that'd be quite a voicemail for him. So, the Dark Angels and the Space Wolves, he's like, oh, what now? No, they teamed up, and they're going against the Inquisition.
Rob would be like, I'm going through a tunnel.
Like, do I care about this? Let's just see what happens.
I'm a little busy right now.
I got like Mortarion to worry about, so
Yeah, I'm a little busy, so could you call back like in a week?
A week?
Give me like 7 business days.
A week in Primarch time is what, like 700 years?
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much. He'd get back to it like in 10 years after half the Inquisition was dead. He'd just be like, so what was that?
You guys cool now? No?
I would love that. It would be the greatest gift.
Oh, I am waiting for this this Inquisition war to happen. And I know that this takes place. I know that this takes place like, a ways before any of this. But I mean, those seeds, quote the Horus Heresy, those seeds are sown. They are there.
They are. And I think we've talked about that a lot. That it feels as though we are gearing up toward there is very real potential for there to be another type of civil war within the Imperium, and I imagine that it's going to end up being the mouthpieces versus the foot soldiers. You're going to have the military end of this versus the Inquisition or the ecclesiarchy or whomever. And granted, this probably doesn't get super prioritized in Rob's mailbox because you're talking about something that happened 600 years ago, but I can't imagine that he would be disinterested.
No, especially when he hears that the Inquisition was threatening to exterminatus an entire first founding chapter.
The chutzpah involved in there is just. What are you doing?
If I hadn't known that this was like so long ago, I would have, and that this was written like what 8 years ago or so, I would have probably been like, oh, shit, we're about to have a civil war going on. I can't imagine reading this when this first came out.
Oh my god. Oh my gosh. No, I can't either. You could add this to the list of books that I regret having not read when it first came out. I had the copy of it. I bought it. I'm sure I looked at it and was like, ADB! But knowing me and my dumb ass, I probably looked at it and was like, but it's not heretics! Put it away. Night Lords for life, guys.
I get it, but he can write others too. It's
No,
okay. Yeah, he can. You wrote Spear of the Emperor. You like that. I didn't.
I loved that book.
See?
The man can stick a fucking ending. Well, it's, again, and this is one of the things with this book, too, that those last... So, all right. I texted Keri at about right after, actually right as he starts talking about the Months of Shame, and I was like, oh, God. This is going to be about the Inquisition and the Space Wolves going to war. And I even looked at the book, and I even said to my husband, it's like, ugh, like 100-something pages left of this. And then Logan Grimnar kills Lord Uros, and just right into the end. And the whole time we were like, oh, and it got to the end. And it was very sad that it was over. I was so happy my boy Mal got to be a tech marine.
So I ugly cried at the end of this book. I started ugly crying at the epilogue. And then when I saw chapter 10, which I was like, well, that's just weird, but I kept going anyway. I mean, it brought about the same feelings I had when I read To Kill a Mockingbird, which I read for the first time just a few years ago. And it was, I know everyone gets so shocked, but I didn't have to read it in school. So when I first read it, had strep throat, I had nothing else to do, so I sat and read. And so I read it like in one day. And I remember, because I compared Prospero Burns to Kill a Mockingbird a lot, because they both started off with some random storyline that didn't make any sense until the very end. And at To Kill a Mockingbird, when they got to the point where they talked about breaking his leg, it hit me the very beginning of the book, and I started to sob. And this was kind of brought a lot of those same feelings when I saw it all come in full circle. And I just, and of course, quarantines probably had something to do with this as well. We're all under like a lot of stress and pressure. But I mean, I just sat here and I ugly cried. Like it was.
See, we had, and that was funny, not funny, like amusing to me, because we had an equally strong reaction, but we were just belly laughing with Bjorn because he was just slapping him. And I think it's because we're both such Space Wolves fans. This book feels like a book for Space Wolves fans. And
I could see
at
that.
the end, I was just so happy at the end. Like the whole time I was reading it, I was like, that's so nice. That's so nice. Because we joke a lot in this podcast that there are no happy endings in Warhammer 40k. And okay, yes, billions of people are dead. A master of the Grey Knights is dead. Like a bunch of shit happened in this book, you guys. But it was just such a nice ending. He got to see Mal again. Mal is now a tech marine. He got to do the thing that he wanted to do. Hyperion is clearly grown up. He's now a prognosticar. They got to go and ring the bell for Sothis. It was just, it was so nice.
It was just, it was
reminded me-
beautiful. That's why,
It really
that's the only way I can
did.
describe it. It was just so beautiful.
It really was. And it was, oh, fuck. It was just so nice. And so the thing that I've said about, and it's funny because I just called him the anti-Stephen King. We were watching the movie version of Dr. Sleep the other night, and there was this really nice scene in there, and I was like, when Stephen King wants to be nice, he is so nice. And I was starting to think ADB is the same way, because when he wants to be nice and he wants to be sweet.
Yeah.
I was so happy. So I guess what we're saying is that this book really, really is going to be a hard act to follow for our next book.
Yes.
Which is The Last Hunt by Robbie McNiven.
So we're going from Space Wolves to another kind of brutish chapter, the White
Renegade-y
Scars.
chapter.
Yes. Because I don't think they follow the Codex either.
No. They pretty much, well, kind of, more so than the Space Wolves do.
Okay, well, everybody does more so than the Space Wolves do.
Valid. But it's the other savage, fuck you, we do what we want chapter. So I'm actually very excited about this, also because my boy the Nids are in here. Everybody knows that.
That's
like
what I'm
Nids.
not excited about, is the Nids in here. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, but after, Apocalypse, I wanted to learn more about the White Scars, and I happened to see this book, and I was like, we need to add this to our list. Jen hadn't read it either, so hey, let's get some White Scars on.
Since nothing's being published right now, because we're still in week 8 of quarantine.
Yeah, it's getting kind of scary. We're getting through what we have that we agree on.
Right. After this, it's just going to be, this is how we're going to both end up reading Requiem Infernal, because that book is my Everest.
Yeah, I'm not reading that, so you're on your own.
Well, if they don't publish anything else, you are, Pumpkin.
No, I'm not. I got other things. Okay, if I read Requiem Infernal, you're reading Mephiston.
I already agreed to read a Blood Angels book, and that is Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer.
Oh my god.
Would you like to take us out, Keri?
Yes. Yes. We're going to talk
Twilight. On my Twilight reference?
We're going to talk about Twilight. We're out. That is how you know it's time to go, when they bring up Twilight. But you've listened to the Warhammer 40k book club episode regarding The Emperor's Gift by our man, ADB, Aaron Dembski-Bowden. Be sure to join us for our next book, The Last Hunt by Robbie McNiven. We are an unofficial book club and not affiliated with the Black Library or any of its affiliates. You can find both the vidcast and podcast on our website, WH40kbookclub.com. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, give a review, and all those good things to the vidcast on YouTube or the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Our site also has articles about our adventures in reading other Warhammer 40k books and short stories outside of the book club books. So please stay a while and read from a crack. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.